Chosen ones, your enemies paid good money to get these corrupted officers on their payroll. Surveillance, harassment, false charges, the whole dirty playbook. But they never encountered someone with divine protection before the harassment. Started subtle. Police cars circling your property at 3 a.m., random traffic stops every time you left your house. Unmarked vehicles following your movements, badges flashing with smug confidence. They filed false complaints to justify their searches, thinking their uniforms gave them power over a divine being. Amateur move. It started with their equipment malfunctioning in your presence. Body cameras shutting down the moment they stepped into your energy field. Their radios picking up strange frequencies, angelic whispers and divine warnings. Their computer systems crashing every time they tried to file false reports against you. The first seeds of fear started growing in their corrupt souls. These corrupted officers weren't ready for what happened next. Your aura activated at full power during their last harassment attempt. They saw their own dark souls reflected in your divine light. Their weapons turned cold in their hands, badges, losing all power in your presence. Some swear they saw wings unfurling behind you, while others caught glimpses of angelic beings in their rearview mirrors. Now they're learning what real authority looks like. Their corruption exposed on every level, spiritual and physical. Karmic debt collectors working overtime on their cases. Those who bought their badges with dirty money are watching their whole network crumble. The higher-ups who orchestrated this harassment, they're having nightmares about divine courts and celestial judges. Word spread quickly through their corrupt ranks. Don't mess with the one protected by divine light. Now those patrol cars cross themselves when they pass your house. Their badges hold no power in the presence of spiritual authority. Some of them quit the force entirely, haunted by the divine light that exposed their souls. Others are seeking redemption, realizing earthly power means nothing against heaven's authority. They learn the hard way that badges can't protect corrupt souls from divine justice. Your enemies wasted their money buying police harassment, only to create a testament to your power. Now everyone knows, when earthly authority meets divine protection, heaven's law always wins. Drop a comment. I am the signal they cannot decode. If your presence scrambles their control, their instincts betray them, and their authority fractures under a force they cannot name or counter. Their systems, both technological and psychological, were not designed for your frequency. They expect resistance, compliance, anything they can categorize, but your presence refuses to fit. The corruption they serve thrives in spaces of fear, deceit, and coercion. Yet, in your field, those forces weaken. The weight of your energy presses into the fractures of their false authority, unraveling the illusions they rely on. Their tactics misfire, their confidence drains. What once worked elsewhere fails here. Some grow restless, unable to maintain their composure. Others suppress the urge to retreat, unable to explain why every cell in their body urges them to step back. They have names for everything, laws, ranks, procedures, but they have no name for this. They cannot weaponize what they cannot define, cannot attack what they cannot reach. They feel it, even if they will never admit it. They expect submission, yet they are the ones who struggle to hold their ground. They expect to impose order, yet the longer they stand in your presence, the more disorder they feel within themselves. They may never understand what happened here, but they will never forget it. And long after they leave, the weight of this moment will linger. They launch their attack with certainty, believing force alone will secure their victory. But something shifts. Their aggression does not land. It lingers, suspended, waiting for a reaction that never comes. Their tactics, once effective, now feel hollow. The weight of intimidation, the sharp edge of their commands, it all rebounds, twisting back toward them. What should have weakened you instead amplifies your presence. Every move they make fuels what they fear most. Their anger does not diminish you. Their threats do not shake you. And as their force collides with an unmovable presence, the pressure they intended for you begins pressing into them instead. There is no negotiation, no loophole, no rewriting what has already been sealed. The weight of their actions accumulates, unseen but absolute. The system they trust, the structure they uphold, will not save them from what they have set in motion. Corruption thrives in secrecy, but here there are no shadows to hide in. Their deeds ripple outward, triggering forces that they cannot contain. The very power they wield against you turns against them, not as a sudden strike, but as an inevitability. It does not announce itself. It does not need to. The moment they chose to act against you, the consequence was already written. They will not see it at first. It will come as a slow unraveling, their certainty eroding, their stability crumbling. The same hands that seized, the same voices that condemned, will tremble under the weight of what they cannot name. Their power will fracture not through opposition, but through the inescapable return of what they sent out. And when they finally realize what is happening, when they feel the walls closing in, it will be too late. Because divine law does not forget. It does not forgive. It simply returns. The moment they step forward, a shift begins. Their instincts warn them before their logic catches up. The structure they rely on, protocol, intimidation, force, none of it works here. Their bodies react before they understand why. Hands hesitate, glances shift, hearts pound against the armor of their uniforms. Every action feels off, every movement laced with doubt. The fear is not overt, it is worse. It is subtle, insidious, unraveling them from within. They do not fear resistance. They fear the absence of it. They fear the void where fear should be. This is not normal. This is not something they were trained for. They are not responding to an opponent. They are responding to the weight of something, unseen, something that does not move yet forces them to move differently. Now they hesitate. Now they question. Every step forward feels heavier. Every breath drawn feels shallower. They were prepared for opposition, for chaos, for disorder. But they were never prepared for this. They were never trained for the slow undoing of their own certainty, and now they can feel it. The ones they sought to break are still standing, and they are already beginning to fold. The obsidian inner order was forged for those who refuse to live in the shadows of mediocrity. This isn't your standard mastermind. It's a crucible for those who dominate their reality and demand excellence. Every week, over 450 members dive into raw, unfiltered sessions that deliver the exact blueprint for crushing your goals and claiming what's yours. Every strategic session is recorded and stored in our vault, ready for you to access whenever you need to fuel your next conquest. This isn't about motivation, it's about domination. Our private Discord rises above basic networking. It's a fortress where apex performers trade the kind of knowledge that separates the rulers from the ruled. Here, real power players connect and share strategies that stay behind closed doors. You'll get immediate access to modern manifestation mechanics, an arsenal of proven strategies that turn vision into reality. Plus, you'll get exclusive interviews with high-level operators and video content so potent it makes the status quo tremble. This isn't just a membership, it's your ascension to power. Stop watching from the sidelines. Your seat at the table of titans awaits. The link is in the description below. They arrive with force, expecting resistance. But instead of defiance, they are met with something far more unsettling: stillness. No fear, no reaction, no validation of their authority. They have been conditioned to believe power is demonstrated through action, through control, through exertion. But here, their entire framework collapses. They push forward, expecting a response, but the absence of struggle leaves them exposed. They are used to opposition they can crush, to chaos they can control. But when they encounter something unmoved, something unbothered, something beyond their reach, it forces them to confront their own insignificance. Their presence should command. Their presence should be the deciding factor. Yet the longer they stand before you, the more their own presence begins to fade. They cannot force a reaction, cannot impose themselves onto something that does not acknowledge them. Their confidence, once so rigid, now crumbles beneath the weight of the unknown. The power they thought they carried begins to turn on them, not through attack, not through aggression, but through reflection. They see themselves now, small, uncertain, desperate for control in a space that does not bend to them. And in that moment, they realize they are losing without a single move being made. They leave, but they do not leave victorious. They retreat, but they do not retreat intact. The battlefield was never physical. It was never about strength, weapons, or tactics. It was about presence. And presence does not need to fight. It only needs to exist. Corruption collapses under its own weight, and you never needed to lift a hand. The divine had already spoken before they even arrived. They wear the uniform, but they do not serve justice. They answer not to law, not to principle, but to those who have purchased their silence, their loyalty, their hands as weapons against the ones who refuse to kneel. They are not enforcers of order. They are instruments of control, wielded by those too cowardly to show their own faces. Their badges are not symbols of honor, but receipts, proof of transactions made in rooms where morality has no seat. They follow commands not because they are right, but because they are paid to obey, because their livelihood depends on looking away, because the weight of a corrupt system has folded them into its machinery. Their power is not their own. It belongs to the highest bidder. They do not act of their own accord. They enforce policies crafted by hands stained with greed. Every raid, every fabricated charge, every act of brutality is not about law. It is about ensuring the powerful remain untouched. Those who stand outside their system, those who cannot be bought, those who answer to something greater, they are the true threat. Not because they break laws, but because they expose the ones writing them. A corrupt officer does not fear crime. They fear truth. They do not chase criminals. They chase those who remind them of what they have become. Integrity has a price, and many have sold theirs cheaply. They tell themselves it is just a job, just another day, just following orders. But the cost of selling your soul is never calculated in money. It is measured in what remains when the paycheck is gone. And when the weight of their actions finally settles, when they look in the mirror and see what they have turned into, they will understand. Not everyone can be bought, but those who can will never hold real power. They enforce with force, but you move with authority. They wield laws that shift with time, with power, with wealth. But divine law does not bend. The state exists to control, to impose, to demand obedience, yet it trembles before those it cannot. Subjugate. The ones who walk with divine authority do not need permission, do not seek validation, do not acknowledge the chains designed for them. That is what the system fears most. Not rebellion, not resistance, but those who operate under a law that predates nations, kings, and empires. They attack not because you are weak, but because they know they have no jurisdiction over you. Every empire that rose through conquest, that maintained itself through suppression, that thrived on the illusion of absolute power, fell the moment it turned its weapons against the righteous. Rome, Babylon, every nation that declared itself untouchable crumbled when it sought to erase those who carried something greater than its armies. The playbook never changes. They label you a threat, a radical, a danger to order, not because you bring chaos, but because your presence exposes the fragility of theirs. They are not fighting crime. They are not enforcing peace. They are hunting those who remind them that no system built on corruption will last. Their downfall is written before they act. They sharpen their weapons, send their enforcers, rewrite laws to justify oppression, yet nothing they build will outlast truth. The moment they declare war on the righteous, they sign their own death warrant. They think they are tightening their grip, but they are accelerating their fall, because power that relies on fear is already defeated. And when their foundations collapse, when their leaders vanish, when their laws are rewritten by those who come next, the divine will remain untouched, unmoved, unchallenged. They arrive with force, believing their authority is absolute. They move with confidence, expecting obedience, expecting fear, expecting the familiar submission they have been trained to extract. But something fractures within them before the first command is given. It is not resistance that shakes them, it is the absence of it. They do not face terror. They do not face pleading. They face something still, something unbothered, something beyond them. And in that moment, a crack forms in the foundation of their certainty. The tactics they trusted, the aggression they wielded, now feel empty in their own hands. Their voices waver, their grip tightens, not because of opposition, but because they are now standing in the presence of something they were never prepared to confront. It does not happen all at once. It starts as an unease they cannot name, a pressure that lingers long after they have left. They tell themselves it was just another operation, another name on a list, another job completed. But deep down, something gnaws at them. The more they enforce, the more they unravel. Sleep is no longer restful. Silence is no longer empty. The faces blur together, but the weight remains. Their own actions have turned against them, not by force, but by truth. And truth is relentless. It does not need to chase them. It simply waits. Some break under it. Some walk away, unable to enforce what they now recognize as hollow. Some become the very thing they once hunted, because they finally see the system for what it is. A machine that does not spare even those who built it. The same institutions that rewarded them will discard them. The same forces they wielded will turn inward. Corruption always eats its own, and when the collapse comes, they will not be standing on the side of power. They will be drowning beneath it. They step forward as enforcers, believing their authority is unquestioned. Their orders, their uniforms, their laws, these are the weapons they have always wielded to shape the world in their favor. But the moment they cross into your space, something shifts. Their presence does not land the way it should. The commands they give seem to dissolve before they are received. The weight of their authority, so effective elsewhere, does not hold here. They have walked into a domain where their jurisdiction does not extend, where their presence is not recognized, where the system they serve holds no dominion. And in that instant, something inside them knows. They are not in control here. Some will suppress it, pressing forward with force, mistaking the pressure in their chests for tension instead of revelation. But others will feel it fully, standing in the presence of something beyond them, something vast, something immovable. They came expecting to dominate, but now their own instincts betray them. Their hands tighten over weapons they suddenly question. Their voices falter against a silence that does not yield. Some will fight harder, hoping aggression will drown out what they refuse to accept. But others will hesitate, eyes shifting, breath slowing, because deep down they understand. They are standing in the presence of something greater than themselves. And that is where the division begins. Some will double down, their fear twisting into rage, desperate to reassert control over a reality slipping through their fingers. Others will flee, unable to stand in the presence of what they cannot grasp. And then there are the few who will break, not from fear, but from understanding. They will lower their weapons, their voices, their pretense of authority, because they see clearly now. Not everyone who arrives as an enforcer will leave as one. Some will leave as witnesses. You do not move in the timeline they believe in. They act as though the present is fixed, as though their power is solid, as though their control is absolute. But you see what they cannot. The past is not forgotten, the future is not uncertain, and the present is nothing more than the inevitable intersection of both. Their corruption did not begin today. It was a seed planted long ago, watered by greed, nurtured by fear, shielded by systems that mistook longevity for invincibility. But what has a beginning must also have an end, and you have already seen theirs. They move against you with conviction, unaware they are only accelerating the collapse written into their own foundation. They cannot understand why their presence does not shake you. They misinterpret your stillness as inaction, your silence as weakness. But they do not realize they are standing in a moment already accounted for. Every force that rises against you is simply fulfilling a prophecy they were never meant to control. You see the fractures before they appear, the unraveling before the first thread is pulled. They fight battles that have already been decided, struggling to hold onto a power that was never truly theirs. You do not need to resist. You do not need to defend. You remain exactly where you are, and that alone ensures their defeat. They came with force, with orders, with the weight of a system built to crush anything outside its control. But you were never within its grasp. They pushed, but you did not move. They threatened, but you did not fold. And now, something irreversible has happened. They have seen what cannot be unseen. Their tactics failed. Their presence faltered. Their authority collapsed in the face of something they could neither break nor comprehend. They will not admit it, but they felt it. The unraveling. The moment they realized their power was an illusion, and you were something beyond their reach. The cracks in their foundation have begun to spread. Their institutions, their enforcers, their carefully crafted illusions of control. None of it holds like it once did. Some will pretend nothing has changed. Some will double down, trying to force what no longer bends. But others will walk away, unable to unsee what they witnessed in you. Because you did not just resist. You did not just endure. You altered something fundamental. The game they once played no longer works the way they expected. And the more they push against you, the more their own downfall accelerates. They wanted to erase you. Instead, you became permanent. They wanted to silence you. Instead, your presence echoes through every space they tried to claim. You did not just scare them, you changed the game. And now, the only question that remains is how many others have stood where you have stood. If you have seen it, if you have felt it, if you know, share your story. The ones who thought they were untouchable need to understand. They were never in control.